I moved to the suburbs a few years ago. I thought it would bring me peace. My old city life was too loud and chaotic. But this place was quiet, almost too quiet. I set up my home office and hoped to find inspiration. It all started out fine. One night, while working late, I heard a light tapping. It was soft, like someone was drumming their fingers on the wall next to me. I shrugged it off. Maybe the house was just settling? But the sound stuck with me. The tapping returned each night. Then it grew louder. I heard faint voices, like whispers sneaking in through the walls. Sometimes I caught laughter too, just as I was about to concentrate. It made my heart race. I wanted to ignore it, but it gnawed at me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Then there was my neighbor. His house was right next to mine. I saw him staring at me sometimes. He would peek through the blinds. I tried to avoid looking, but sometimes our eyes met. It chilled me. I wondered if he thought I was strange. I felt like a character in a bad horror movie. One evening, I opened my door and found something odd. It was a piece of art, abstract, with dark colors that disturbed my stomach. There was no note. My breath quickened. A neighbor's gift? Or something darker? I wanted to ignore it, but it felt like a warning. The noises became worse. They felt like they were closing in on me. I wondered if others heard them. I must have sounded insane if I told someone. Some nights I sat in silence, straining to catch the tapping, the whispers. I felt trapped in a dream I could not escape. Then came the final night. I heard loud banging, frantic and urgent. It froze me in place. I thought about calling someone for help, but who would believe me? I crept to the window and peeked out. My neighbor stood there, staring right at me. My heart raced. I don't know how long he had been there. Finally, he moved slightly, and I blinked. When I looked again, he was gone, vanished. I couldn't sleep at all that night. I was rattled. Had I made all this up? Was I losing my mind? I fought the urge to feel helpless. I knew I had to leave my home, but I didn't understand why. I wanted answers. I just felt an overwhelming need to escape. Days later, I packed up my things and left. I got in my car and drove away, but part of me still wondered what was really going on there. I still see that dark piece of art in my mind, and sometimes visit my neighbor's house in my dreams. Something happened there, and maybe I would never know the truth, but leaving was my only choice. I drove for hours, the road stretching ahead like a lifeline. My heart still raced, but I felt a smidge of relief to be away from that eerie house. Yet my mind was a tangled mess of questions. What were the noises? Who was that neighbor? And the art, why did it feel like a message? I decided to check into a motel for the night. The thin walls felt better than my old place, but echoes of whispers still crept into my thoughts. I kept reminding myself that I was safe, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following me. The next morning, I woke early. I needed coffee. As I stepped outside, I spotted a plump, cheerful woman watering plants nearby. I decided to strike up a conversation. She seemed friendly enough. "Hi there," I said, trying to sound casual. "I just moved from the city." "Oh, welcome," she exclaimed. Her eyes sparkled, and her smile brightened my day. "We love it here. It's peaceful, right?" "Yeah, sometimes too peaceful," I replied, half laughing. Her smile faded a bit. "When it's quiet, you can hear the echoes. They can be unsettling for newcomers." My heart dropped. "What do you mean by echoes?" She leaned slightly, her tone dropping to a whisper. "You know, noises. Some people say it's the wind. Others think it's the trees. But I've heard telling laughter late at night." I forced a smile, but chills crept down my spine. She was confirming everything I feared. "I see." She straightened, her cheerful demeanor returning. "Well, make sure to say hi if you see Thomas next door. He's a harmless fellow, just a little odd." My stomach tightened at the mention of my neighbor. Right, Thomas. I trailed off, feeling sick. The woman noticed my sudden change of expression. Don't worry too much about him. He's just shy. A bit of a recluse, you know. New people tend to make him nervous. Great. Just what I needed. A strange neighbor with a fear of outsiders. My breath hitched at the thought of that night, of his gaze piercing through my window. Thanks for the heads up, I managed to say. As I turned to head inside, I saw a framed piece of art on a nearby wall. My heart raced. The style looked familiar. Jarring colors, dark shapes that twisted like shadows. I took a step closer, scanning for a signature, but found none. "Did you—" I began, spinning to ask the woman, but she had already walked away, lost in her plants. I felt the skin on the back of my neck prickle. The art seemed to be from the same morbid artist who had left that piece at my door. On a hunch, I turned and walked past my car, back toward the woman's garden. But just as I did, I noticed movement out of the corner of my eye. It was Thomas, peeking at me through his window. There was an intensity in his stare that sent a jolt of fear through me. Then he jerked back, disappearing from view. I stumbled back, heart pounding. I had to escape this place. But before I could decide, a chilling thought struck me. What if the dark piece of art wasn't just a gift? What if it was a warning? That question loomed as I hurried back inside, feeling more trapped than ever. I spent the rest of the morning pacing the small motel room. The walls seemed to close in, and my thoughts spiraled. I couldn't shake the idea that whatever was happening wasn't just a figment of my imagination. I needed answers, and I couldn't stay here. By noon, I decided to drive back to the house. Maybe it was foolish, but I had to confront Thomas. If he was connected to the strange art, maybe he could explain the echoes. My heart raced as I took the familiar route, the trees towering over me like guardians gone rogue. Pulling up to the house, I felt an unsettling chill. The porch creaked as I climbed the steps, every sound amplified in the oppressive silence. I knocked on the door, my knuckles barely touching the wood before it swung open. Thomas stood there, his unkempt hair framing his gaunt face. He seemed startled and ill at ease, his eyes darting around. "What do you want?" I hesitated, searching for the right words. I just wanted to talk." He squinted as if sizing me up. "About what?" "The art," I blurted out. His expression didn't shift. If anything, it grew tense. "The piece that was left at my door. I think it's connected to you." There was a long pause as he stared at me, uncertainty flickering across his features. "You shouldn't have taken it," he finally replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why not?" I pressed, driven by desperation. "What does it mean?" He opened his mouth as if to answer, then shut it tight, glancing behind him as if expecting someone, or something, to interrupt. "You need to leave," he said urgently. "This place isn't safe." "What do you mean?" I was losing control of the conversation. "Are you in danger, or is it me?" Thomas stepped back, seemingly weighing his options. I could see his fingers quivering. "I told you. The echoes. They want something. They're hungry." Before I could respond, a loud bang echoed from somewhere in the house, like a door slamming shut. Thomas froze, then bolted to the side, and in that moment, I caught a glimpse of something darting away behind him, dark and shadowy. "What was that?" I gasped, stepping back toward the door. Thomas looked panicked now, eyes wide. "You shouldn't be here." I didn't wait for him to elaborate. I turned and ran down the steps, pure instinct propelling me to my car. I fumbled with my keys, my hands shaking. The engine roared to life, and I peeled away from the house, my heart racing. But the anxiety weighed heavy in my chest as a new realization dawned on me. If Thomas was afraid, then whatever lingered in the house was real, and it was watching me. I needed to find out what had happened there. That night, the echoes returned, louder and more frantic. The laughter below was no longer mere rumors. It was undeniable. A part of me felt pulled to it, as if it was calling my name. I sat up, trembling. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. Then a soft knock on my motel door broke through the din. My breath caught in my throat. I wasn't sure if I should answer it, but my curiosity forced my feet forward. Who or what could it be? I opened the door, my pulse racing. The night air felt thick, carrying an electric tension. I leaned out, half expecting something unnatural to leap out at me. Instead, it was a woman, her hair pulled back tight and her features sharp. She seemed familiar, but I couldn't place her. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice low and steady. There was something in her eyes. Concern, maybe? But it felt like a mask. I'm fine," I stammered, glancing back at the cluttered room. "What do you want?" "I heard some noises, the echoes," she said, her gaze shifting past me, as if trying to peer into my very thoughts. "They've been loud tonight, haven't they?" Before I could answer, she stepped inside, brushing past me. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, a chill threading through her words. "It's not safe." I had no idea who she was, and part of me wanted to push her out, but something stopped me. "Who are you?" I managed, a mix of dread and fascination swirling in my gut. She turned, and in the dim light, I could see fear etched across her face. "My name is Elise. I used to live here, in this motel." She glanced around, as if making sure we were alone. "It's a long story, but you need to understand, the echoes aren't just sounds, they're memories." I felt a rush of confusion. Memories of what? Of things that shouldn't have happened. I thought I was alone in hearing them, but it seems they found you too. Her eyes widened. "Have you seen it? The shadow?" I ground my teeth together. Yes, I saw something in Thomas's house. Elise took a step closer, dropping her voice to a whisper. "You have to leave this place. The echoes, they're tied to the house. They're growing in strength." Before I could respond, her expression changed. She looked toward the door, panic flashing across her features. "We're not alone. You need to—" Suddenly, a loud thud resonated from outside. The floorboards seemed to shake beneath my feet. I jumped, my heart racing. What was that? Elise took a step back, eyes darting around the room. "It's here. We need to go." I felt rooted to the spot while fear clawed at me. "Where? What do you mean?" The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to shift. I could hear muffled laughter, echoing in the distance, a cruel mimic of joy twisting into something sinister. I turned and saw the door slightly ajar, a dark figure hovering in the shadows. Elise's breath hitched. "No, there's no time." In a frantic rush, she pulled my arm, dragging me toward the window. "We have to escape. It can't be allowed to get us." That's when I saw it, a hand, pale and long-fingered, reaching out from the darkness. The fear inside me exploded, driving me to act. I twisted away from Elise and bolted toward the door, adrenaline pushing me forward. But as I flung it open, a sharp pain shot through my chest, and I stumbled back, breathless. The world twisted, and everything went dark. I felt myself falling, the ground slipping away. The echoes erupted into a deafening choir, and for a moment I thought I heard Thomas's voice among them. "Run while you can!" Then everything went silent. I blinked, struggling to regain my bearings. Darkness lingered around me, thick like fog. I tried to stand, but found that I was lying on the floor of my motel room, disoriented. My heart was still pounding, echoing in my ears. Gradually, I became aware of a low whisper, weaving its way through the air. I sat up, rubbing my eyes, trying to make sense of it. "Elise?" I croaked, forcing my voice above the unsettling murmur. No response. I peered around the room, shadowy figures flitting just beyond the edge of my vision. I couldn't tell if they were real or just products of my shaken mind. The echoes began to build again, crashing over me like waves. Each sound was a jumbled reminder, a broken scene from someone else's life. I scrambled to my feet, instinctively searching the room for Elise. She had been there. I remembered her urgency, her fear. But now it was just me and the overwhelming noise. I stumbled toward the door, unsure of where to go. As I reached for the knob, something caught my eye, a flicker of movement outside. I hesitated, heart racing again. Was it her, or something else? I opened the door cautiously, the hinges creaking ominously. The night outside was eerily quiet. I stepped into the cool air, scanning the empty parking lot. The streetlights flickered above, casting long shadows that danced along the pavement. For a moment, I felt exposed, as if the darkness had eyes watching me. Then I heard it again, the whispering, louder now. It wasn't coming from the shadows. My breath quickened as I turned to my left. There, standing a few cars down, was a figure. The woman's face was obscured, but something about her stance felt familiar. "Help me," her voice drifted through the stillness. It was a plea, thin and desperate. "Who are you?" I called out, taking a cautious step forward. The echoes around me seemed to hush temporarily, as if they were leaning in to listen. "I can't hold on much longer," she whispered again. "They're coming for me." I squinted, trying to see her better. My gut twisted with both fear and a strange impulse to help. But how could I help someone trapped in a memory, a ghost of the motel's tormented past? As I took another step, a loud crash erupted from behind me, causing me to whirl around. A door banged open with a force that rattled the air. My heart dropped. I recognized the silhouette emerging from the motel. Elise, her wide eyes filled with panic. "Run!" she shouted, the urgency in her voice piercing through my confusion. And just like that, the woman vanished, swallowed by the night, leaving behind an echoing silence that felt like an unanswered question. I hesitated, looking between Elise and the dark space where she had been. But I didn't have time to think. I turned and ran toward Elise, who was already sprinting toward the edge of the property. As we dashed across the gravel, I felt an icy breath at my back, as if something was right behind me. My mind raced. What was chasing us? What did it want?
"Keep going," Elise shouted without looking back. I pushed myself harder, the gravel crunching beneath my feet. But as I ran, all I could think about was the woman's face and the fear that had lingered in her voice. I had to know more, but first I needed to escape the darkness that had trapped us both. We ran until our lungs burned, the sound of our footsteps blending with the night. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting something to lunge at us from the shadows. But the parking lot remained empty, silent. Still, an unsettling feeling crawled up my spine. "Where do we go?" I asked, trying to catch my breath. "Anywhere but here," Elise replied. She was visibly shaken, her eyes darting around as if she expected danger to leap out from every corner. We made our way to the main road, the dim glow of streetlights offering little comfort. I felt the weight of the unknown pressing down on me. I had questions, but my instincts told me to move first, ask later. "Do you think—" I started, but Elise interrupted me. "Did you see her, the woman?" Her voice trembled. "I did. I wanted to help her. I still do." Elise shook her head. "You don't understand. That's not just a woman. There's something wrong here." As we continued down the road, the quiet was deafening. The bushes on either side rustled ominously, and a sense of dread settled in. I pressed my back to the brick wall of a closed diner, hoping to keep out of sight. "We need to find a phone," I said, glancing around. We have to call the police. Are you sure that will help? Elise's eyes widened. What if they don't believe us? What if... She hesitated, her breaths coming out in short gasps. What if what? She hesitated before lowering her voice. What if they're already watching us? My skin prickled at the suggestion. I glanced back at the motel, just a shadow in the distance. Let's find a busy place. Someone has to help. We crept along the road, wary of any movement behind us. Then, as we rounded a corner, a flickering neon sign caught my eye. It was the diner, buzzing faintly. Light spilled out through the windows like a beacon. Look, let's go in, I urged. Once inside, the diner felt strangely alive compared to the emptiness outside. The smell of coffee and grilled meat hung in the air. A couple of patrons sat at the counter, their faces drawn and tired. The waitress, a gray-haired woman with tired eyes, smiled hesitantly at us. "Can I help you?" she asked, wiping her hands on her apron. I struggled to find words. "We need a phone." "Sure thing, honey," she replied, gesturing towards the back. But as I approached the counter, I noticed the couple's eyes flicker between Elise and me, murmurs escaping their lips. I couldn't shake the feeling that they were discussing us. "Why are you here?" one of them asked, leaning forward with curiosity. "Just passing through," I replied, but my voice came out weaker than I intended. Elise appeared next to me, her face pale.
"We need to call the police. There's something wrong with the motel." "I've heard stories about that place," the woman at the counter interrupted, her voice low. "Strange things happen there. Best not to go digging." My stomach twisted. I had thought we'd escaped, but here we were, being pulled back into the mystery. And then it hit me. What if the woman who asked for help wasn't just a ghost? What if she was something worse? The moment hung thick with tension, the weight of unasked questions buzzing between us. Just then, a loud crash came from outside, breaking the uncertainty. I turned, my heart racing, as the glass door of the diner swung open violently. "Get down!" someone yelled. I dropped to the floor, and everything went black. When I came to, the noise was gone. The diner was eerily quiet, and the light had shifted, casting strange shadows across the floor. My heart thudded in my chest, and for a moment I couldn't remember where I was. I blinked hard, trying to shake off the fog. "Are you okay?" Elise whispered beside me. Her voice trembled, and I could see her wide eyes searching mine for reassurance. "I think so," I replied, though doubt filled my voice. I pushed myself up off the floor, taking in the dim light filtering through the windows. The patrons were still there, frozen in their seats, as if time had stopped for them, too. "What happened?" I asked, looking around. "A car crashed into the sign outside," the waitress said, her voice shaky. She had returned to the counter, and worry etched her face. Everyone was yelling. I couldn't understand. The door behind the counter swung slightly, revealing the back of the diner. A dark hallway stretched behind it, shadows creeping in. My instinct urged me to explore, to see what lay beyond, but fear held me in place. Elise grabbed my arm. "We should go, now," she insisted, urgency dripping from her voice. "But we need to call someone," I argued, scanning the diner for a phone. "What if the police can help?" Before Elise could respond, a loud bang echoed from the back hallway. We both flinched, and I felt the tension snap tight like a drawn bowstring. "What was that?" I whispered, my throat dry. "I don't know, but maybe we should get out of here." Elise's face was pale, and I didn't like the idea of leaving without answers. I hesitated, still processing the unsettling feeling that filled the air. "Look, I think we should check what's back there. If it's something bad, we'll be prepared." Elise shook her head. "Are you serious? What if it's something worse than we imagine?" But before I could argue, an odd sound echoed from the hallway, like a low, tortured moan. My stomach twisted, and all my instincts screamed at me to run.
"Let's go," I said, grabbing her hand. We made our way towards the door, but as we approached, the same couple from the counter stood blocking our exit. Their faces were no longer tired, but twisted into expressions of fear.
"Don't leave," the woman pleaded, her voice barely a whisper. "You don't understand. You can't go back there." "Why not?" I shot back, my voice strained. "What are you hiding? We just want to get out of here." The man stepped closer, his gaze darting between us and the dark hallway behind him. "There's more going on than you think. The woman you saw, she's tied to this place. You don't know what you're up against." A chill raced down my spine, and I wanted to flee. Instead, I felt drawn to the mystery. "What woman? What do you know?" But their expressions hardened, and the waitress stepped in, her arms crossed, as if she were guarding something precious. "You should leave. It's not safe here. The longer you stay, the worse it gets." Every voice in me screamed to flee, but my feet felt glued to the floor. I had to know what was going on. That's when the moaning began again, louder than before, sending shock waves of fear through the diner. It echoed in my mind, relentless and chilling. I turned back to the dark hallway. Then everything went dark again, but this time I wasn't the one who was fading. I turned just in time to see Elisa's eyes widen, mirroring my own horror. Because someone else was standing in the doorway now, facing us. And she was not alone. The figure that emerged from the hallway was cloaked in shadows, but even in the dim light, I could see her face. Twisted in anguish and lined with fear, her eyes seemed to bore into my soul. I stepped back, gripping Elisa's hand tighter. "Who are you?" I tried to demand, but my voice was barely a whisper. She didn't answer. Instead, her mouth moved as if she were trying to speak, but no sound came out. Whatever was happening, I could feel it tightening around me like an inescapable grip. The couple looked terrified, their eyes darting nervously between the woman and us. "Please," the man said urgently, "you have to leave. She's not what you think." "What do you mean? Who is she?" I pressed, needing to know. "Just go," the woman cried, and I almost stumbled over my feet trying to back away. But Elise stood firm, her gaze locked on the spectral figure. A flicker of recognition danced in Elisa's eyes. "I know her, I think." A shiver ran down my spine as the woman's mouth finally formed words, but they were muffled and indistinct, like an ancient echo clawing its way from the depths of the diner. "Get away!" the waitress shouted, stepping closer, trying to shield us from whatever horror loomed behind her. The strange woman flicked her gaze toward the waitress, fear mingling with some deeper animosity. I could feel the tension rising. "Look," I said, my head swirling with confusion, "if she needs help, we can help her." Before anyone could respond, the woman started moving closer, stepping into the meager light. I could finally see what was on her arm, a thick chain glimmering in the dull glow of the diner. The link was rusted, a deep crimson staining the metal where it had worn against her skin. I froze as realization hit me. "She's—" "No!" The man's voice rang out like a hammer, pulling me from my horror. "You don't want to know. We have to go." But it was too late. The woman's moan transformed, morphing into a haunting, guttural wail that echoed off the diner walls, shaking the plates and causing the glass to tremble. I covered my ears, but the sound pierced through, and panic ignited in my chest. Elise let go of my hand and took a step toward the woman. "Stop! What do you want from us?" As if in response to Elise's plea, the woman lifted her chin just enough to reveal her eyes shining with something other than despair, something ancient. A flicker of recognition danced across her face, and the wail morphed into an inhuman snarl. In that moment,
Time froze. My mind raced, processing the desperation in Elise's voice, the fear in the waitress's face, the horror of the couple watching us. Then, without warning, the shadows thickened. The air felt heavy, and the moment shattered. A surge of energy rushed toward us, and just as quickly as it had appeared, the woman and the couple vanished, leaving behind nothing but silence and the stench of despair. Where did they go? My voice felt small in the empty diner. But when I looked at Elise, her expression had changed. Fear was gone, replaced by something darker, something that turned my blood to ice. "I think," she whispered, "we just became part of whatever this is." The diner felt less like a safe haven and more like a trap closing in on us. And now the shadows didn't just linger, they began to crawl. "Let's get out of here," I urged, but something inside me wanted to stay. I had to know more. Before I could make a move, a new sound echoed from the back hallway. It was soft, almost playful, like laughter intertwined with agony. My heart sank. Whatever haunted this place wasn't done with us yet. The laughter echoed again, weaving through the air like a sinister melody. Elise and I exchanged a glance, and I saw her uncertainty mirrored in my own eyes. I wanted to grab her hand and run, but curiosity pulled at me, a dangerous lure. Before I could gather my thoughts, the sound grew louder, more distinct. It wasn't just laughter. It twisted into whispers, teasing and tormenting, a cacophony of voices layered on top of one another. I stepped back, reluctantly dragging Elise with me toward the door. "Let's just leave, please," I urged, but she hesitated. I have to see," she insisted, her eyes wide with intrigue. I could see that she wasn't afraid. She was fascinated. Without warning, the soft lights in the diner flickered. Shadows danced across the walls, twisting into grotesque shapes that threatened to swallow us whole. Just then, the laughter morphed into a cry, a shrill, deafening wail that pierced through the diner, making my skin crawl. Why is this happening? I gasped, panic gripping me tighter. Elise's face shifted. "It's like they want us to know something." For a moment, I felt an unfamiliar weight settle in my stomach. It was as if the air had shifted, charged with an invisible force. I glanced back at the hallway, somehow expecting to see the woman again, but only darkness awaited us. Just then, a figure emerged from the shadows at the end of the hall. My heart raced as I strained to see. It was another person, dressed in clothes that looked as out of place as the diner itself. They stumbled into the light, revealing a gaunt face framed by matted hair, eyes wild and darting as if searching for something. "Help me!" they cried, voice cracking with desperation. "You have to help me before they come back." The dread in their tone pulled me in. Who's coming?" I asked, taking a step forward despite the tight coil of fear in my chest. But they only shook their head, eyes glazed with what seemed like recognition. "You don't know. They'll take you too." I felt a chill run down my spine, and I instinctively moved closer to Elise. The shadows in the diner were thickening again, curling around the figure like a predator closing in on its prey. "Run!" I shouted, but Elise grabbed my arm. What was happening? I had wanted answers, but now I was frightened of what they might be. The figure didn't wait for us to decide. They turned and bolted toward the back hall, disappearing into the black. "Elise, we should go now," I insisted, panic bubbling under my skin. But she stared after the fleeing figure, eyes filled with determination. What if they know something? What if they're connected? Before I could argue, the lights flickered again, plunging us into darkness for a heartbeat. And then it all changed. An oppressive heat wrapped around us, the shadows seemed to pulse, and the air became thick with a palpable dread. I couldn't breathe. My instincts screamed at me to get out, but as I turned toward the door, it vanished, disappearing like a mirage before my eyes. We were trapped. Then came the sound again. It was the whispering, no longer playful. Now it was sinister and clear, chanting a name. My heart raced as I strained to make it out. Then everything shifted. The walls of the diner pulsed outward, and I realized we were not alone anymore. "Elise," I whispered, my voice trembling, "we need to go, right now." But as the cold laughter echoed once more, I knew deep down that whatever awaited us didn't plan to let us leave. What I saw next would haunt me forever. I turned, desperation clawing at my throat, and saw the shadows coiling closer, morphing into shapes that felt both familiar and terrifying. Elise still stared into the darkness, an expression of dreadful curiosity plastered on her face. "Do you hear that?" she asked breathlessly, leaning forward as if she could pierce the veil of night that loomed before us. I did hear it. The whispers had intensified, forming words, real, unmistakable words. They twisted around our minds, tugging at our thoughts, like a child pulling at the sleeves of their parents. "Help us," they murmured, in a chorus that sent chills racing down my spine. "Join us." I gripped Elisa's arm tightly, trying to shake her from her trance. "We need to leave." My voice was frantic, and my heart thundered in my ears. But instead of pulling away, she seemed entranced, her eyes shimmering with something dangerous. "They want us to help," she insisted, her voice barely audible, mixed with the cacophony of pleas around us. "What if we can save them?" "Save who? What are you talking about?" My own panic felt insurmountable. The room felt like it was closing in, the air heavy, thick with dread. I glanced back at the shadows, seeing movements lurking just beyond the reach of the light. "Don't you see?" Elisa's gaze was filled with a haunting resolve. "This, whatever this is, it's a memory, a piece of someone's life that went wrong." Dark figures began to materialize in the air, twisting and contorting like smoke, their faces hidden behind shadowy masks. I felt the cold crawl down my spine, drawing me closer to the edge of my sanity. "You have to choose," they whispered, the voices blending together in a haunting melody that stirred both terror and an inexplicable yearning within me. "A choice?" I echoed, confusion swirling in my mind. My instincts screamed to flee, but the very thought of leaving Elise behind turned my resolve to water. "We have to get out," I insisted, tugging her back toward the very place I had once thought of as a refuge. But the shadows twisted, elongating and stretching like claws toward us. A horrific laughter erupted, splintering the air, drowning out reason. It echoed inside me, an ancient call, layered with sorrow, longing, and despair. The ground began to tremble beneath us, and for a brief moment I thought I felt the soft warmth of breath on my neck, a whisper of memories, lives lived and lost intertwined. "Join us." The chant was now clearer, stronger, imbued with an otherworldly power that tugged at my very core. Unease washed over me. "No, no!" I screamed, my voice barely carrying above the clamor of voices calling us. I turned to Elise. Her face was pale, eyes wide with a mix of awe and horror. I could see she was wavering, caught between wanting to break our connection to the echoes and her inexplicable draw toward whatever lay shrouded in darkness. And then, just as suddenly as the frenzy erupted, a blinding light pierced through the shadows, casting everything into stark relief. I squinted, regrouping my thoughts. For that fleeting moment, the whispers faded, and all at once I saw it clearly. The woman from earlier emerged, her face now illuminated in the light, a tragic visage of sorrow, not wickedness. But then a chill ran through me as realization dawned. She was not entirely alone.
Figures emerged behind her, distorted and grotesque, mirroring her despair, but twisting it into something hungry and vicious. They laughed with an undulating echo, and I felt my stomach drop. I didn't know if I was witnessing salvation or damnation. "Run!" I shouted, instinctively grasping Elise's hand. We turned, racing back toward the diner's entrance, but the shadows surged forward, blocking our path. My heart pounded. The terror of being ensnared clung tightly, each shadow brimming with malice. In that moment, I thought of the woman's despair, her silent call for help. Whoever she was, whatever tormented her, resonated deep within me. But the weight of those echoes pressed heavier, threatening to drag us both into the void. "Elise!" I yelled, a sense of urgency spilling from my lips. "We can't help them, not like this. We need to break free." She hesitated, casting one last desperate glance toward the shadows, swirling in the corners like alive predators, drawing in closer. "But they're trapped. Don't you want to save them?" My heart sank, battling against her conviction. "Not at the cost of our lives, please." Finally, something flickered in her eyes, a flash of realization, and she nodded slowly, her grip tightening on my hand. Together, we surged toward the back of the diner where the dim light barely illuminated the hallway. Just as we reached it, the echoes roared back, drowning out all sensibility. I felt the very fabric of reality quake beneath our feet. The cold shadows clawed at our heels, urging us to surrender, to stay forever, and become part of their haunting story. "No!" I yelled, propelling forward with every ounce of strength left. I burst through the door, dragging Elise behind me, and stumbled outside. The cool night air hit me like a slap, a stark contrast to the weight that pressed down inside the diner. We raced toward the parking lot, but a heavy shudder ran through the earth, wrapping us in a cold embrace. I looked back, half expecting the horrors to pursue us, but for the moment, we were free. We paused in the parking lot, panting and disoriented, our hearts still pounding with adrenaline. I looked back at the diner and saw it standing silently now, a looming silhouette against the night sky. The whispers faded, dwindling into nothingness, though I felt the weight of untold stories still hung in the air. As we collected ourselves, I couldn't shake the feeling of something left undone. There would always be questions. Questions about the shadows, the echoes, and the woman who faded into whispers. Why had she needed help? What would have happened if we had chosen differently? And all at once, I realized. I had left something important behind. Part of me tethered to the darkness enveloping that diner, forever marked by the reality that had left me shaken and uncertain. But for now, we were alive. I looked at Elise, her eyes reflecting the muted colors of dawn beginning to break over the horizon. Unsure if I would ever find the answers I sought, I realized that some mysteries were better left in the dark. I turned away from the diner, knowing I would never return. As we walked to the car, the shadows lingered at the edge of my vision, barely distinguishable but always present. A reminder that, though I physically escaped, the echoes of that place had already seeped into my being. I may have left the motel, but it would never truly leave me.